There's a lot of women that I feel like is so underdeveloped in that way because they were wired to marry a rich man. But that's why rich men can leave women for hotter women because they're wired the same.
So you're saying the guy's wired that way?
I think
and
so.
the woman's wired that way?
Yeah.
So the woman's never going to be able to keep the guy anyways?
Yeah, if you actually don't work on yourself and work on actually building a true connection with someone, and you're only there for the basic necessities, which is usually money and...
So what's going on, everybody? So on today's show, we have Tawni Nguyen. You're from Vegas, from Henderson. You came all the way over here. What are you here for?
I'm here to actually take a road trip, get out, unplug a little bit.
Yeah,
it's
you got
nice
the
to
dog.
Get off grid.
You got the honey and the dog.
Oh yeah.
Are you guys married?
We're mentally married.
Okay, I guess that's there.
It's more important than the date and the wedding and the debt that most people go into to be married, right?
Yeah. Well, married's cool. Being married's cool. Big weddings are not so cool if you can't afford them.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. If you can't afford them, just keep it real simple.
Yeah. We don't believe in that. We don't believe it's more about the commitment and when you decide to honor each other rather than spending a fuck ton of money to impress people that you probably don't ever want to see again.
Like you said, people get married all the time without the commitment. They don't even know what the hell they're doing, right?
Yeah.
They're just getting married. They're rolling into it. So yeah, commitment is probably the first thing, right?
Yeah. And I think starting your marriage off being like $50,000 in debt just to impress like your friends and family, like that's just not something I believe in.
No.
I used to plan those weddings and stuff in my 20s, right? And I saw how much debt people were going to, and I'm like, how do you want to start your relationship just by that, you know?
Yeah, no, totally. Because like the debt, what finances is like a big cause of divorce. You know? I think it used to be number one. It may not be number one now, but I mean that people fight over every day over finances, not enough money.
Yeah. I think not enough of people know how to have the conversations around it because it is really hard to bring up money because it's such a sensitive topic.
Yeah.
And a lot of people enter that with like really fragile egos, especially if they were raised and they were conditioned differently. Because our families, like being Asian, like I was raised not to talk about money. It's such a taboo topic.
So you're Asian? I'm just kidding.
You can't tell?
No.
But yeah.
Yeah. So, and then you like, what's just on this topic is I think a lot of times these young adults don't talk about money either, which they should. Like my daughter is going to be 21. She's going to graduate from the university like next month. And like, I'll tell her, you know, these guys, make sure they have good credit.
Yeah.
You know, you got to talk money with them. You got to talk finances because you can't just go into some relationship with someone. Yeah. And they could be illiterate when it comes to finances, or they have some baggage that you don't even know about. Right?
Like, isn't it sexy? Like on the first date, I feel like people are afraid. Like, what's your FICO score? Like, why can't you ask that? Because most people don't even know their credit score.
No, and that tells you what kind of person they are, right? Yeah. And now people get over it. Like I had bad credit at one time. I told you I filed bankruptcy. Now, I mean, that's years ago, right? And just a bad mistake. But you need to know, okay, well, if this person is going through it, are they coming out of it? Right? Or are they just like lazy bums that just won't pay their bills? Yeah. And you don't want that guy or girl.
No, I think bankruptcy doesn't have to do with your mentality or your worth as a person. It just means that you were willing to risk and take more risks than most people to do something, to go after something much bigger.
And just made a big mistake.
Made a big mistake. And it's what you do with that mistake. Did you choose to like pick yourself up and turn it around and actually build this massive business that we're sitting in right now? Yeah. Right? Like, so bankruptcy, I don't think ties anything to what you're capable of. Yeah. But most people, once they see bankruptcy, they're like, oh, like that's kind of scary, right? Yeah. But it's easier to judge as society to look at someone that has filed bankruptcy, not understanding that it actually takes a lot more risk to go against that, to be a little bit more contrarian and then know how to pick yourself up and then go after the big thing again and again and again. And that's what failures in entrepreneurship is all about.
Yeah. And that's the key. What you said is like, pick yourself up and go after it. Like, don't be afraid. Just keep going after what it is you want, and you're going to fall. You're going to bump. You know, obviously you want to try to do things the right way, but sometimes that just don't happen. You know, sometimes we just get caught up in something, or you learn from the wrong person. Yeah. You know, like a story is like, we'll get to some other questions, but like, when I came up in the industry, the last company I worked for them for 6 years, and I learned a couple bad habits that I carried on into my business, and it bit me in the butt like a few years into it.
Yeah. What were some of those?
Well, the way I paid people, you know, and I ended up getting audited. You know, I got audited for it, and it cost me like a few $100,000. and we were early in. And this is just a habit I took from the company.
Yeah.
You kind of know what to do, but when you've been ingrained in doing something a certain way, and I just carried it over, right? And so sometimes you can learn how to be wrong, right?
Yeah.
Working towards perfect doesn't mean it's going to be right, because you can keep learning the wrong way like your whole life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And that takes a lot of humility to understand that just because someone else that used to make more money than you is doing something a certain way doesn't mean that that's how it should be done or that's how you should be doing it.
Yeah.
Right. And you learn that that's a couple $100,000, but let's just say when it's even bigger, like it's $10 million worth on a mistake that you could have course corrected to begin with.
Yeah. No. And then the mistakes, obviously you're in entrepreneurship, I think you're a capitalist. Those, they change, the mistakes change. Right. And as we grow, they grow. It's a bigger mistake, right? Yeah. When we were smaller, I remember we'd make a mistake and it'd cost like $200 when we were little, right? Then it went to like 2,000. Yeah. Then the mistake would cost 20,000. Then the mistake would cost 200,000. And that's how, like, when they get bigger and bigger, the mistakes grow and grow. So these people that are ultra wealthy, when they do make a mistake, they feel it. Because it can be, imagine like someone that goes and buys multifamily apartments and they're spending 60, 80 million on a complex, 120 million or more, right? 120 million on a complex, and they make a mistake. Yeah. They're losing 30 million like that.
Yeah. And regular people that hasn't invested on that level doesn't understand that it actually takes money to lose money. Yeah. Not that you want to go into it thinking like, I'm going to lose $10 million to make 100, but sometimes it really is like that. And people can't understand that pain. Yeah. And for us, I think the hardest is like losing a couple $100,000 sounds like a lot because most people are not aware to give themselves permission to go for big numbers because that's what they rely on is they think that a couple $100,000 in retirement on their 401k or their pension or whatever that they work their entire fucking life for is enough. Yeah. But it's barely the seed for anyone that actually goes into building an empire, like a business or anything worth, right?
Yeah. And sometimes what happens is, we make mistakes. People make mistakes. They lose money or whatever, and it handicaps them. Like it almost like it's like a handcuff where they're just stuck and they're afraid to make. Like what we made a couple of big mistakes this past last year, like some big, massive, like way beyond those numbers. Yeah. And I had to say, okay, freak, I gotta go back into this. I can't be afraid of the big job. Yeah. Because so many times is we get whacked and you're shy off that, what I mean? Yeah. But, we had to get past that, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think a lot of that too, even with your sign at the door, a lot of loss is attached to an ego. Yeah. Because we attach our value to money and to anything tangible.
To what we're doing.
And to what we're doing because that's your identity. Because if you're not performing or you're not making money as a man, right, or a woman in business, then you deemed yourself like you are not worthy of the next big thing. So it's actually really hard for you to separate yourself from the ego versus like, what does this loss really mean? What does it say about me? Yeah. And how can I just separate myself and detach myself from the outcome that I'm performing to get the money? Yeah. Versus am I the person willing to take these pieces and put myself back together and do something different so that I don't make that same mistake while having the integrity of, like looking at yourself the same way. Because it is really hard, like to lose money. It's really hard. And you have no one to talk to because then you feel like if you share that,
it's like shame.
It's shame. And it's guilt. And there's not a lot of vulnerability when people do business with each other because everyone wants to have like the biggest business and no one talks about their failures. Nobody talks about failures on the internet. All these gurus are like, I made $200,000. Just
hey, I seen someone sent me a post on Instagram, one of our estimators downstairs, and it was like an overweight girl, and she's like, how can I go on a diet and lose weight when all I do is win? I just thought it was so funny. I was like, I guess so. Yeah. She's never gonna lose weight because all she does is win. No, so like you got this entrepreneurial mindset, and we're talking about this, but let's go back a little bit. How did you get this way to where you're running and gunning, and I mean you're born in Vietnam, right? You immigrated at the age of 10, I think. Yeah. With your mom to Virginia.
I know, crazy story, right?
Yeah, how'd that happen?
So the backstory is I actually came here on a green card marriage. So we paid our way to get to the States, and it just didn't work out.
Hold on, what's a green card marriage? Like a bot wife?
A bot.
Yeah.
Yeah, like my
what
like my family.
There's a name for that.
I don't know. I just call it a green card marriage because we paid that family to marry my mom so that we came over.
But it wasn't like a guy that went and found a wife.
No. Oh, that's the passport bros or something.
Oh, okay.
No, my mom didn't passport.
So it was just like, hey, I'm gonna. Can I pay? Can you marry me? I'll pay you to marry me.
Yeah, like here's $50,000.
Yeah,
but of course, in like the 2000s or 1999,
I remember a lot of people
money.
used to do that. A lot of people. That was huge in the late, like mid 90s, late 90s. That was huge.
Yeah.
Everybody was doing that.
Yeah, so that's how we came here. Is we paid our way here, and the living situations didn't work out.
Yeah.
So, we fled that because they just didn't turn out to be good people. They were almost like slave laboring us in a way.
So you paid them $50,000 and you're still getting kind of jacked around.
Yeah, like my mom used to do nails for one of their business, and I worked at their dry cleaning as a child. I was 10 years old, and they were never like paying us. They were keeping all of her tips. It was around the holidays, and like they were just not paying us any money.
That's Virginia.
So we just left.
The country folk.
Yeah. So we just left. It was white. It was racist as hell. And it's like, and it was just really weird because we were dealing with like not understanding the language.
Yeah.
There's a huge culture shock for my mom and I both, right? Because we fled here. And then
they got the doggy in the back. They're good. The dog's good.
And so we fled that, came here, left everything. So I understand what loss is as a child because when you grow up in a communist country, so when my mom was growing up, like they took a lot of her things away too as a child
in Vietnam
with the whole communist rush and all that stuff with our family businesses. So when we came here, we left everything. Not the first time. Came to California homeless on the street, just not having a single word of English, like trying to live on friends and family's floors and stuff until we started working in like back at restaurants.
How did you guys get to California from Virginia?
There was a nice family that like found us on the streets. Like it was like dead of winter, snowing. We were turning purple. We didn't have
Virginia?
any clothes. Yeah.
So you're like, I'm done with these people.
Mm-hmm. We escaped out of the basement kind of family.
Hey, so you guys were like
crazy, dude.
So you left communism and you're like, we're going to the land of the home and the free America, and you get right back in the same thing. That's terrible.
I know.
Dang, that's crazy.
It takes 20 years of therapy to laugh about it now.
No, yeah. And then so you're in the middle of the snow, like homeless, wandering, and someone picked you up?
Yeah, so I think it was a nice like older couple that just gave us some money.
Yeah.
And we were trying to figure out like how we can repay them. But it's one of those things that you don't really understand because that part of my brain kind of blocked out that trauma.
Yeah, you're little.
Right, because I was so little, but I think we were so focused on surviving at the time that I don't know if my mom completely worked through it. So I don't know how to re-enter that conversations versus something in our tradition, like with Vietnamese, like we don't talk about trauma and like adversities.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, because we don't believe in therapy and that there's nothing wrong with you, but there's just so much suppression of emotions that we figured it's best just to sweep under the rug. And I think that's the normal societal conditioning. It's just, let's just pretend all of our dysfunctions and all of that doesn't exist. Let's just pretend to be functional, right? Because we're all walking dysfunctions. We're carrying something that unless you are willing to do the internal work to look at that part of yourself and allow yourself and give yourself permission to understand where you come from, you never really let that identity go, because you still carry that pain into your business, into your relationship, and into every other walking thing that you go into in the future. And I just like, that's just something that I've worked really hard to not allow it to control me anymore.
Yeah.
Because I've given a lot of that power in the past away.
Yeah.
In like my early 20s and all of that. And now when you come to terms with business and like who you are as a person, I'm like, I'm kind of glad that happened. I'm kind of glad.
It made you tougher. You got to see more things and learn from it.
Yeah. Did I have that same mentality back then? No, because it was always like, why is this happening to me?
You're getting beat up. And now it's the victim because you're so used to you've been beat up. Yeah. A lot of people that have gotten beat up become victims. And that's why you got to keep fighting. Yeah. Right. So like get out of that victim mindset. Yeah. So you get to California and you're in Orange County. What area?
In like the Fountain Valley, Garden Grove, Huntington Beach area.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like
in Huntington Beach. Yeah. No.
Yeah.
So you guys, there's some little hoods in Huntington Beach. Like there's little 1 block things, and there's just like ghetto right there.
Yeah.
Little apartments and stuff. There's like 20, 30 apartments, and it's like how'd those people get there?
Yeah. It wasn't like Compton where you hear gunshots,
No.
but it was like
my dad lived in he's been dead like 4 years now. But he lived in Huntington Beach for a long time. And I like Huntington Beach.
Yeah, nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's where we mainly stay when we visit.
Yeah.
It's with one of our like family friends.
Yeah. I thought you were gonna tell me Irvine.
No. We're not that Asian.
I love
too bougie for my blood.
I love Irvine.
We love the hood.
I like Irvine.
Yeah.
I just like Irvine. I like the Asian culture. I love the Asian culture. I love it. I love all the food.
Yeah.
So you're in Orange County, and then like how does that? So what time? So were you still 10 when you moved to California? Or how old were you? What do you think when you got to from
we didn't
Virginia?
stay there long. Yeah, I was roughly around the same age. So when I came to California, I think I entered 5th grade.
Yeah.
Which entering from a Vietnamese like private school industry into American, education, it was really freaking weird because I had like ESL classes and I couldn't test into any of the classes because you don't speak English. Mm-hmm. So how are you supposed to test into an English class if you can't understand math? Like. So it was really difficult just in childhood, just understanding like if you're stupid or not, right? Because just because the societal education system is different doesn't mean that there's something defective within you. And the food here is like terrible. So I had a really hard time adjusting to all the fast food.
Yeah.
And it's just all of these other things that kind of like started rotting me as a child because not understanding, not making friends and not being able to communicate even with my mom, right? Because she's focused on survival. And, making ends meet, right? Just to keep us alive.
Yeah.
And how you're supposed to thrive in that environment as a child to understand that part of your brain is not fully developed, right? Because if you carry that much trauma with you that, as a child, like you come in, and I'm an only child too. So I was pretty much like her emotional support. Mm-hmm. So I learned at a young age. Just you two
for a bit.
Yeah. For a bit until she met my stepdad and then she remarried, so that part of me, like, it's like I've seen relationships come and go so fast. That I think that part of me kind of taught me is like, hey, what are these patterns that I can unlearn now in my 30s before I have children, before I pass on the same hardship? Because I don't believe kids should be disciplined in hardship, right? Because that's just an easier way to emotionally neglect your child.
Yeah.
Like just because you had a hard upbringing doesn't mean you should pass on the same.
Yeah.
Because look at how you turn out.
Well, not only that, and that happens in marriages too.
Yeah.
The spouse carries it and freaking beats up the other spouse for old trauma.
Yeah. Because we're all just little kids, right? Just because you're getting older doesn't mean you're getting wiser.
No, you got the same stuff inside of you. Mm-hmm. Those same memories and all that. We learn either to suppress them or work through them.
Yeah.
It's there. I don't care what anybody says. It's all there.
Yeah.
We just learn to navigate through the waters.
Yeah, and you know what? With us, like we talk about the whole prenup thing, right? Because we do business together. We spoke a lot about this like all the times, like when you do business and when you build a life with someone, what are the conversations that you should have prior? And for us, it's like for sure therapy. Like therapy has to be a big part of it, is because of identifying those patterns and what it is that we're actually bringing in, our emotional capacity to hold for one another. And then when it comes to business, like it's not just a piece of paper that you sign at the county court or wherever you get married.
Yeah.
But it's also like understanding like the values of what it is that you need to have the conversation. For us is understanding like, let's talk to a divorce lawyer first and understanding loss.
Yeah.
And talking to like estate planning lawyers. Like, let's look at the positive and the negative sides of marriage so that we come into it with a conscious decision of like, this is a big risk, right? Any business is a risk.
Yeah.
Marriage is a huge risk of all because that's the person you spend the most of your life with outside of yourself.
Yes.
So the relationship with yourself has to be super solid. The relationship with them is a bonus on top of that solidity. So if you start falling apart in your marriage, then like you said, there's a lot of people that brings their own projection into it.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, I like that you're talking about like the prenup thing. Cause I told my daughter too, she was talking about getting married and I was like, you're going to have to do a prenup. I go, cause I'm building a legacy that you're going to be part of. And I don't want this bum getting it, and so, I guess that what like the prenup's a tricky topic for certain people. Some people don't believe in it, right? Especially if they don't have nothing. Then you'd say, okay, well, who's bringing what to the table?
Yeah.
Right. And so do you think, since we're talking about this, do you think that couples should still do a prenup? Say they're both just bringing kind of the basics to like they're both growing, learning, whatever. Just say they're both in entrepreneurship. They're both building businesses, and they bring it together. They're equally yoked. Do you think they should still sign a prenup, or do you think if you're equally yoked that you should just roll with it?
I think the more conversation is what, in the end, what do you see? Like, what is the actual vision?
Yeah.
Just because W-2s are a little bit easier to solidify because with entrepreneurship, the financial instability is what wrecks a lot of couples that can't have that conversation because we're wired by society to have stability be ingrained in how women choose mates too, because most women date for stability, right? Unless you're an entrepreneur, then you understand what it takes. Because it's a little riskier, but I think they should have the conversation regardless, because just because you don't have anything now or you don't feel like you're worthy because you don't have much, let's just say $100,000 net worth or something like that, doesn't mean that it's not going to change in 5 years.
Yeah.
But if that person doesn't think they're going to increase their net worth and their value and their actual contribution to the relationship, whether that's in business or anything, like any sort of cash flow, any sort of asset, then that should change the way you have the conversation. It's like, do you actually want more for your life? Do you want more for yourself, not just in this relationship? Because I think that's harder to have than, hey, like, I don't have any money, so are we good? But later on, that's how you build resentment. It's because it's easier to build in a place to where you're both happy and both in love to have a conscious conversation rather than where you're fighting and you hate each other and you're like, well, F you, like this, like I built this $10 million, $100 like or $100 million business. Yeah. And now you want a piece of it.
Oh yeah.
But it's kind of like
I agree with that. Yeah, because you do have some when one spouse doesn't do that much as the other. Yeah. I mean, I guess it depends. Like, what would you say about say the man goes out and does the work, right? Builds the business, and the woman becomes the stay-at-home mom, 4 or 5 children, whatever. Yeah, is she part of that deal, or should she be left out, or should she be like? Should the guy give her a piece of the pie, or should he be like, hey, you didn't do nothing for the business?
I think raising children is actually its own job.
Yeah.
Just because you're taking care of the children, just because you have children together, doesn't mean you're actually raising them well.
Yeah, no, it's true.
So whoever that's actually raising the kid, hopefully both parents are actually instilling values, not just the man makes the money and then checks out completely and disassociates from his family.
Well, this is what happens.
And this is what happens to most family. Yeah. And societal conditioning makes it so normal that the guy goes out, makes a ton of money, doesn't care about his wife, doesn't pay attention to her, and uses money as an excuse because money is tangible and everything else she does, which is like a probably 6+ figure job at home while trying to navigate her own emotions and regulating the kids' emotions. And you said 5 kids, like that's 5 different sets of personalities.
Yeah.
And
right.
Like you could be paying 5 nannies, and how much is that, right? Because society loves to tie value and worth to money. But it's like, what are you really bringing to the table? If you have the conversation ahead of time, even bringing into the relationship, like, like, hey, I want to be a housewife, but this is what I bring to the table. I can cook, I can clean, I don't mind it. But once it becomes a resentment to where you have to stay at home because the woman doesn't feel like she brings monetary contribution to the relationship. Yeah. And then that's how they resent each other later on, because survival is dependent on money. We don't like saying that money is not important, but money solves a lot of problems that you would not otherwise have. Because if you don't have money, then you have a whole different scarcity problem that your relationship would never thrive on. But so for the man to bring that to the table, is that all he brings? It's like, okay, I got the sperm and I got the money. But like, who's raising the kids here, you know?
Yeah. And he's going to have to pay for them if she leaves him.
Yeah.
He's going to pay for 5 kids and her.
Yeah. So now he's going to resent child support.
He's going to resent the kids.
And so
a lot of times that happens. The guys resent the kids because he's paying this lady that he hates now,
Yeah. And that's not a true partnership.
Yeah.
You're just pretty much paying like a surrogate to have your kids so that you can build an empire, but you're not building it together. So how's your home life and how's your mental health and all of these things that is so sacred in a partnership that people can't have the conversation ahead of time. Starts with a prenup. It's like, hey, just because on paper there's not a lot of like money, but what are the other values that you can actually measure? There's mental stability. Who's aware of like the mental bandwidth it takes to keep the household together. There's emotional capacity.
So would you? I've never done a prenup. I never even seen a prenup agreement.
Yeah.
Does it make you lay out kind of like a business partnership? Yeah. Same thing, like where you're laying out who's doing what and how and when and all that.
Yeah. So we actually just got our estate planning sheet. We're still in the process of like navigating that because it's a lot of paperwork.
Yeah.
And having the conversation is more important than penciling it down.
Yeah.
Because it goes by like step, like real estates, assets, stocks.
Yeah. We did ours. So an estate, and then you got to do the trust as part of the estate, right?
Yeah. So
the trust is the first part. Yeah.
Yeah. That's literally what we're in the middle of.
You got to get a book like this big.
Really?
Yes. It's crazy.
Oh my God.
But you don't got no kids, right?
Not yet.
And then do you have kids? The dog is the baby.
The dog.
But so it gets crazy, like when you get kids in there and different businesses and different properties, and yours, like it's insane.
Yeah. So for us, we agreed like, hey, whatever we build together outside of whatever our parents, like the inheritance, I'd still feel like, since I'm an only child, we had this conversation, like whatever my parents decide to leave me, I want to give them the peace of mind that it would just be mine. If
that's true, it should be yours.
Yeah, like it will be mine.
Yeah.
And if I decide later on, once my parents pass, that it's fair to add that to the value of our whole estate, then that will be my decision. But as long as they're alive, and as long as there's uncertainty in going into a marriage, right?
Yeah.
I want to make sure I give my parents the peace of mind. Like, hey, I'm your only daughter. If you're gonna give me this, like I will honor it and not do anything dumb and give it to somebody. You know? Which no, they love him, but it's just something that I know now that going into pre-parenthood, that's what I would think about.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's like what I was saying, what I told my daughters.
Yeah.
And I think every young man or woman that's going to marry the opposite sex, is they should think about that, especially if your parents are doing decent and they're building, they're building something for the child, right? And leaving an inheritance, it's like, you don't know what's going to happen, and you should be in control of that portion. Yeah. No matter what. Right. And, just say, you guys are obviously going to get married or whatever. You're still going to bring the, if you needed money and you had the money, it's still going into the pot, It's not like you're like, you know what, we've been married 10 years and we're broke and I have 500,000, I'm out. You'd have to be in a real bad place to do that. You know what I mean? Yeah. You're gonna be like, I'm gonna save the day.
Yeah. I mean, if it takes you 10 years and you can't multiply your net worth, then there's a fundamentally foundational problem with the marriage itself.
There's a lot of people that can't do that. There's a ton of people.
It's a long time.
No, most people can't do that. Yeah. Like, 9 out of 10, maybe more like 19 out of 20 probably. Yeah. Probably can't do that because they're check to check. Even if it's a higher wage, they're still check to check. So it's becoming financial literate and learning from, say, people like yourself or watching these podcasts is like, you have to make changes. And if you didn't do it, teach your kids.
Exactly.
Teach your kids to be smarter, a little wiser. Because the last thing you want to do, say for me, and God willing, like, we become ultra successful, super rich, and my kids, they're going to get it, right? God willing, all that happens. The last thing I want is for me to hand off like X amount of dollars and then my kid just blows it with some spouse that's just using them. Yeah. Because that happens. Yeah. Especially when there's money involved. Baby. There's money involved, right? Yeah. You don't know, a good looking person comes along and boom, and that's it. And they use you up.
And sadly, that's what I witness a lot of too in Orange County is there's a lot of gorgeous girls that like it's always just focus on looks. Yeah. But they don't really bring anything outside of, can we cuss on the show? But like, it's just pretty much just like looks and really
that's
bringing.
That's a little much. It says God first on there. No, you're good. Well, he'll beep it out or something.
Yeah. But it's just, I just feel like that value itself doesn't really last a long time because if you're not really willing to build the foundation and go through the gritty part with a partner, let's just say that man is worth $100 million later and all she brings is nothing. Yeah. I would be resentful too. Of course. If I was either party, Yeah. So there's a lot of women that I feel like is so underdeveloped in that way because they were wired to marry a rich man. Yeah. But that's why rich men can leave women for hotter women because they're wired the same. So there's a double standard in society that's
so you're saying the guy's wired that way?
I think
and
so.
the woman's wired that way. Yeah. So the woman's never going to be able to keep the guy anyways.
Yeah. If you actually don't work on yourself and work on actually building a true connection with someone and you're only there for the basic necessities, which is usually money and stability. Yeah. Which is if someone puts a roof over your head, give you a little bit of allowance, kind of like a sugar daddy. Yeah. then that's not like a real marriage, because you're just then asking, you know, like, does this person really truly love me for me? You know, and then part of being seen in a relationship, it comes with financial hardship, because if you can love someone when they got nothing, like, are you truly going to build it together? Or are you just there because you know that they have the potential to make the $100 million, and then you just want that alimony check, like, peace, give me half.
Yeah.
And then they move on to the next guy. It's the same thing. And social media make it so much easier to, you know, kind of like romanticize ourselves that relationships like that exist, because it's easier now. It's easier to walk, you know, you can't meet someone, but you can go look at them on social media.
Yeah. Well, you could go meet them. You can, like you said, you can be like, oh, they got a Ferrari. Let me go chase them down and leave state real quick.
Yeah.
And then you find out they were just renting it that weekend.
Yeah.
No, totally. This is good conversations on relationships. So like you're did you went to, I read that you dropped out of college, and then did you go back?
I went back from guilt from my parents. Only child, when they find out that you're a dropout, is not pretty in the Asian culture.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I barely made it out of high school too. If it wasn't for that last push, I probably would have dropped out of high school.
Yeah. School's not fun sometimes. For some people it's fun. Some people love it.
You know, when I went back the second time, I was like, I wanted to prove to myself and whoever was at the time that my ego had like this like really big revenge against. It's like, I'm going to show them. Yeah. I'm going to show them. And I became this like overachiever that I hated. I got all the grades, but then I made less money than I was when I didn't have any degrees attached to me.
Yeah, because now you're kind of stuck to like a job or a skill set that you're like, I went to school for this, so I got to do this.
Yeah, and it's so limiting because that's what we're wired, right? It's a limiting set of beliefs to wire you to be an employee, because employees is how society functions. Yeah. Sadly, I love the W-2s.
Yeah, you need them.
We need them for it to function, but there are other people that's a little bit more audacious and more bold. They don't need the degrees. Yeah. Because money is not attached to a degree. Money is attached to how resourceful you're willing to be and how far you can push yourself out of your own limits. Yeah. Right? Because it's all limitations. After all, fear is nothing but a false reality of who you think you are not. Yeah. So unless you like remove that like limiting beliefs from yourself, like you're not going to go anything, you know, beyond a college degree and then settling for like a $60,000 a year job.
Yeah. So you're saying the GED I got when I was 16 is useless?
Look at where you're at now.
The GED. You know? I was thinking of doing like a post and showing, look at what I got, guys. Just want to show you the GED. I got it with basically the GED. I got it basically with like a 7th grade education. Really? Yeah, because that's kind of where I stopped learning. Yeah. And so that's how like the GED means absolutely nothing.
Yeah, I don't think that ties to how you run a business, because you obviously have a very successful business, right? You and your wife are still friends at the end of the day. Like she still wants to respect you, and there's mutual understanding of an empire.
Some days.
Some days. Some days we want to slap each other.
Yeah.
But I think that level of success doesn't necessarily attach to what level we can read at or write at, because that's mostly education is seeing how well you can read, write, and do what they say, right? Because that's blind obedience to society. But look at you, like running a business is actually more of a people skill and a self skill.
Yeah, and you learn like I challenge myself all the time. My wife does too. Is like, let's keep learning, let's keep growing. You know, and school's more of memorization, right? And the real world is like, I need to learn new skill sets. I need to bring new things into my brain, right? And then you start like, okay, for instance, when I started the business, when we started the business, so I didn't know how to use a computer.
Really?
Yeah. So I'll be 44. So I was like 28 probably. Yeah. And I just started learning, and she would teach me when I got with her. So I still had a job, right? I was just starting a company, still had a job. So it was like rolling into but it was in 2009 when the recession, all that stuff. And so I would just stay up at night, 4 or 5 hours a night, every night. And she would show me all the basics, how to use Word, how to navigate, how this and that. Yeah. And I would just practice. I still suck at typing, but I'm pretty good. Yeah. You know? And I know how to read now. I'm just kidding.
You're like, I type at a 25.
Yeah, I'm fast. I'm fast. So I can kind of get 2 in there. And I'm really fast that way compared to some people that are just like,
like a typewriter.
I could probably make myself learn, you know, and I would just, but I don't know.
I don't think that skill ties to the amount of money or the amount of
it's not. I mean, maybe I type a little faster, you know, but it's not going to be like I got to use my brain a lot, not my fingers. Yeah. So I'd rather just work on my brain and let someone else use their fingers.
That's what you're paying them for, right?
Yeah. So that's cool though. So, but you did graduate and you didn't use any of that. What was the degree?
Communication studies.
Okay.
Which is actually, when I went back, I wanted the most practical degree that would, it didn't satisfy my parents because they didn't understand what a communication degree is.
They're like, what is that? You can't make no money.
Yeah, they're like, that's
You're
not a
a
nurse.
doctor. Yeah, whatever.
They're like, is that a lawyer?
Yeah.
But I think it's the most practical skills, because when I was 25, I was like, I'm still definitely terrified of like public speaking. And I'm like, what is the one fear that I need to conquer? And communications and learning how to talk to people and just getting better at reading and writing is something that I struggle with, because that's what I attach my identity to. I'm like, I'm not Asian. I'm not great at math. I could do basic math, but I failed algebra like
Asians
3
were good
times.
at math.
I can deal with money. I can't find a fucking slope on a MXB, whatever that bullshit that people,
Yeah, it wasn't important to you. That's all.
Like, when am I going to use the Pythagorean
No,
theorem?
they teach stuff you're never going to use.
Yeah, so I think that degree taught me more about connection to people and teaching students to do the same. It's like, look, I was fuck up. Like, I'm here 30 teaching 18-year-olds how to stand up in the front of class.
Yeah.
And like, try not to read from a piece of paper. That's what public speaking is.
Yeah,
and just watching them sweat a little less each time.
Did you learn debate and all that stuff as well?
Yeah, I love debate.
Yeah.
I like arguing, man. It's just like, I love disagreeable people.
Yeah.
Because when you're in a room with yes mans, like, you don't really grow, because all you hear is yourself. Like, people love echo chambers is because they get to hear themselves over and over. But when I get to talk to someone that like disagree with me, I'm like, yes. It opens up your mind.
What kind of discussions do you like these days like to talk about and debate?
In debate, we did a lot of like rhetoric, right? A lot of Aristotle, a lot more philosophical theory stuff. But when you go out into the real world, how you use it is persuasion, right? Most of the words nowadays is influencer, which I don't agree with, because you don't need to create influence. You create by leading. So if you become a good leader and you can actually rhetorically like persuade someone into doing something without telling them to do something, and you just act of integrity, you raise more leaders versus more followers, because enable to persuade someone, you're asking them to be influenced by you.
Yeah.
But if you're just showing up and just being so empowered in your words and in your action that you lead people by allowing them to give themselves permission to lead themselves, because you don't want to breed sheeps. You want people to actually feel empowered in their own decision making, in the rhetoric of like standing up for themselves. Like, why would you want, love the employee mindset, right? We all have them, but there comes a day to where, eventually they would want to go after the whole personal development thing too. But we as leaders need that the most. It's like, how do we continue to develop ourselves, like you and your wife, right?
Yeah.
Us, same thing. It's like, how do we become a little bit better every day? And how we show up for ourselves, how we show up for each other, and how we bring that into our business and like with people we meet.
Yeah. So speaking of businesses, you're an entrepreneur now. How long have you been into that, the whole entrepreneurial, how long have you had that mindset? Like, did you get that mindset early on? Did you was that something you got in, the second time in college, or like something just like, how did that come on you? And, where's it led that mindset led you to what the businesses you're kind of involved in, and kind of, we don't want to talk details, but, tell me a little bit.
Yeah. So my parents, they have their own business. My mom has always had businesses. Like, I come
from
a family, parents, like my stepdad.
Okay,
so
cool.
My stepdad and my mom run their business right now together.
Yeah.
My grandma has always been a businesswoman in Vietnam. And my mom has always had like her little like hair, and she does like a bunch of stuff where she owned her own businesses until we came here. Yeah. Where she was forced to like do nails and stuff and works for other people. Yeah. Right. Because that's the number one Vietnamese job is nails.
They're pretty good at it.
They're great at it, you know. But I think I developed that by understanding, by hanging out with older kids back then. Like, it's, and I don't want to say it's on a God's First podcast, but when you hang out with,
it's not called God's First. That's just how I live.
But when you learn from the streets, right, like the hood, and you hang out with more drug dealers.
That's how I learned.
You learn business. You learn other ways to make money.
Yeah, you're hustling, you're grinding.
Yeah.
You're making things happen.
Like, how are you going to get a job? I got my first job at Victoria's Secret. I hated it. I was there for like 3 months, and I just stayed for the friends because I was kind of lonely, and that was kind of normal.
At the mall, huh?
At the mall. And I'm like, I hate this thing.
Was
like,
it at Westminster Mall? What mall was it?
It was awful. Oh my God.
It's a big mall.
That was like my worst like fear, to where I want to remember that feeling for the rest of my life when I started becoming more of myself and understanding there's ways to make money. Yeah. That's why I was a bartender, because no one really tells you what to do.
So you were a bartender for a bit.
And that's my love of people comes from that, but also the alcoholism, right? But that's when I started learning that there's ways to make money. If money was the important thing, is to just do multiple things and build side hustles and do marketing and just learn how to market yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Doing events is mostly a people business. It's not really anything outside of catering to people and making sure people are happy. Mm-hmm. So that was my business my entire 20s.
Yeah.
Right. So that developed a lot of skills.
So you went from like bartending and you were doing like other gigs and stuff. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. I mean, I've never worked at a bar. I haven't even been in a bar in like 20 years.
Yeah.
But like, how was that lifestyle? Was that challenging? You know, obviously when you're young, it's fun or whatever. But when you look back, you're like, damn, I kind of wasted some time. Or do you look back and say, I learned some things?
I wasted sometimes by how long I stayed there. Like the last time I was at a bar was 2018.
Yeah.
And I already knew like every time I have a really high turnover, even as an ADHD person, because I get bored of things really quickly.
Okay.
Once I hit a ceiling.
Sorry, bro. Just kidding.
Once I hit a ceiling with like, when I feel like I'm at my max capacity, when I'm at that edge and I can't push anymore, I get bored because it doesn't challenge me anymore.
Makes sense.
And that's when I started learning. I'm like, oh, maybe there is a little entrepreneur in me that like wants to try things. But I was just under so much pressure because I was going back to school, and then college itself, it's like a whole different beast because it conditions you to go back to the way I wasn't like that in my early 20s when I went back to college and seeing how other people were being led. Yeah. Like, it really pisses me off. Like, it started building this fire in me. I was like, when I finish college, I'm going to do all the things I want to do, right? Yeah. So that's why when I graduated, I'm like, I'm going to get the hell out of Orange County, because that environment was like rotting my brain, because everyone was a yes man. Everyone cared about money. Everyone just wants to get, messed up on the weekend, get drunk,
the same scene
go
everywhere.
To raves.
The same scene everywhere. Every city you go to, right? Every city you go to is the same thing.
Yeah, and everyone there is just so comfortable with being average that when you talk about wanting to make more money, they're like, oh, so you think you're better than us? Yeah. I'm like, no, like, how can we get better? But you can't really do that with the set of friends that I had. Yeah. Because they're just so comfortable being average. And now, like, you got to let people grow at their own pace, but you just have to remove yourself from that toxic soil that you place yourself in, because you are responsible for you, not anyone else.
What's that whole crabology? Like, some people would drag you down. They don't even know they're dragging you down. Yeah. And you don't even know you're allowing yourself to be drugged down, because you love the person, you care for that person, they're your friend or your cousin, whoever it is. And you're like, and you don't want to hurt their feelings. So you stick around, like you said, and sometimes you stick around a little bit too long. Yeah. And then now you're suffering, right? Yeah. So
but that's enabling.
It's enabling. Yeah. It's totally. But I'm glad you stopped bartending, because that's a tricky.
It was fun, and I was actually involved with more higher clienteles. Yeah. Like during the day, I got more like richer clienteles that actually ran their own businesses. But I totally missed that opportunity, because I do have some of those connections still today, because we're actually truly friends. But now that I am able to think bigger for myself, I understand why I had to be in those rooms to have those conversations, not just with like the daytime alcoholics, but the people running their business. That's why they have so much freedom. Yeah. They can go to the bar at like 12 o'clock in the afternoon if they want to and have a beer, because their business itself doesn't require them to be there. Yeah. And now I didn't understand that, because I always thought you had to be the business. If you don't do everything, if you're not the chief of everything, then you don't have a business. But now that's the mentality I had to break away from. And that's hard. Understanding as an entrepreneur is like, oh, like the faster you can get out of your business, the better. Yeah. It's hard for anyone to break away from their business, especially when as you're getting started, you got to be all hands on deck, but you want to try to start putting people in the right place, but it's still hard. Like sometimes I think like, oh, we got it. We're rolling. Then I'll lose a key employee or something to another company or whatever. Then it's like, dang, that's a little hit, Yeah. But like you said, is taking that mindset and saying, hey, how can I get better? And like what you said, what people should learn from that is you were in situations where you could have exploited and learned so much more, not necessarily exploited like bad way, but like you're around powerful people, real successful people. If you had that mindset back then, you could have been like, ask them, how'd you do this business? How, and they'll be like, you know what, I'll help you. But if you're not thinking that way, then you ain't getting the information. Yeah. Because people don't just hand out stuff, right? You gotta go. If you ask someone, they will. Yeah. But it's not like if I'm walking past the person, I'm not just telling them, hey, here's how they start a business.
I don't know that they want to know.
Like, who's this crazy guy talking to himself?
Hey guys, guess what? I know this. You're not going to do that. No one's going to do it. But if we go and ask, and or pay a mentor or coach, or there's a lot of ways to get information.
Another thing to that is I didn't have the self-worth to even feel like I could validate myself to have that conversation. Because one, it's really hard for Asian people to ask for things. It's because specifically we're wired to do everything ourselves.
And not talk about it.
Watching our parents. Yeah. It's just you bury all of your shame, your failures, and all that stuff, right? And for me, even talking to someone that's considerably really wealthy back then, like I didn't have like the balls to talk to them. Because outside of serving them drinks and just talking to them about their business and their family, it's like you yourself don't give yourself the permission to even allow yourself to think that way because you reduce yourself to the capacity that you're at. So it's kind of like the fish in the bowl thing.
Yeah.
It can only grow as much as the bowl. If you put it in a bigger tank, like that's what I had to do. It's that I had to isolate myself from friends, family, like anyone I ever knew, quasi friends, acquaintances, influences, whatever it is, and isolate for a while and really figure out like what is wrong with the situation that I'm in and what am I willing to do about it. Not just listen to like random people on social media. Because that's you
got to actually reflect on what's going on in your life. And the only way to reflect, I even tell our team is like sometimes you got to take a step back and just look out. Like we're so ingrained in depth, like we're just stuck in stuff, whatever it is we're doing. We're stuck there, we're looking, we're moving, whatever it is, whether it's a marriage, business, and sometimes you don't see anything, you just see what's right in front of you. And if we just take a step back and say, okay, I can see it's a bigger picture. It's clear, right? I did the same thing. I stopped talking to everybody I ever knew. I stopped talking to, and to clear my mind, to get away from them, because I was on from 13 to 23. I did drugs, and so in order to get away from people, I had to just family members, friends, everybody, And when I was 25, I stopped. That was the last time I opened a can of beer. And so each time I made it from 23 to 25, I started making these heavy changes, and so I got away from some people, and then there were other people were just like, oh, they started making fun of me. You think you're better, you think you're this. Then I became irritated with them. Then as I cleaned up, like you probably yourself, as I cleaned up, I was like, I don't even want to be around these people.
Yeah.
Then for me at one point, I remember I got to a point where like I almost hated anyone that was doing that thing. Like that, whether it was drinking a lot or a lot of drugs, whatever, like I like hated them and what they were doing. It was kind of bad. Like I don't feel that way no more, but I hated the whole situation. So I like despised everything about it. Yeah. And so I didn't even give them a chance anyways. Now at least I'll talk to people and, try to help them or whatever.
Yeah. I think a part of that, why that hatred reflected on you, is because they showed you a mirror of who you used to be. And I went through the same phase, and I'm glad we're having this conversation. Is because true entrepreneurship is a lot lonelier, and it takes a lot longer than most people think or what social media shows. Yeah. But like, you can do it in like 1 year. I'm like, no, you can't.
Work 2 hours a day.
Like, no, you can't. Maybe the 3 to 5 years prior to that, leading up to that, maybe. Yeah. But I think the loneliness and like letting people go and understand why you had to let them go shows you a part of who you are, because you don't want to see yourself, right? Because it's almost disgusting. Like once I realized what an alcoholic I was disgusted for a while.
So when you've seen other people drunk or what intoxicated, you're like, God,
I'm like, I used to be worse than that. Wow. Because that was my only way to connect with people. And that was my way of attaching my validation to people. The whole people pleasing thing is, unless they tell me I'm a good person, a fun person, I don't know who I was.
So you were like, I'm gonna get drunk with them or whatever, and that's how I pleased people or
because that's all you think you're worth. But until you learn your own solitude and being okay with raising your standards to who talks to you, who has access to you, even friends and family now, it's like I'm like, it should be a good thing, right? Because people take raising standards as a reflection of like, oh, you said like you think you're better than me, because it's easier for them to judge you based on where they're at with their life versus you just, oh, why are you trying to better yourself for? You're just fine. But people are really comfortable with average people because it allows themselves to be average. But once they see someone going for something greater, they're like afraid of the potential that they could have had, And I think that's what's kind of missing in society is like, you got to be willing to like lose some friends and, build yourself along the way, because you will lose that part of yourself and you have to let that self die a little bit. You have to kill that part of yourself, whether it be ego, whether you learn how to integrate that part of yourself or not. That's on you. That's your internal work. because you can take your demons. There's nothing wrong with understanding your demons as long as you know what it does to you and in who you become in the process of losing it.
Yeah. So you said you were an alcoholic. Was that something that came out of the whole bartending scene, or is that later on in life?
No, that was all childhood. That was, you said you drank from 13 to 23. Like, I drank since, like, probably 12 to, what, last year?
No, I did hard drugs from when I was 30. Oh. Yeah, I started drinking
I did drugs, too, but...
I did a lot of hard drugs. But So I'm glad you sobered up because, I mean, that's crucial for your future relationship with him and your, future friends, future business acquaintances. Yeah. Because, I mean, I tell, like, these young guys, I'm like, they're like, well, why don't you go and drink, at the bar or whatever? And I'm like, I want to be in my optimal state of mind. I want to be able to make wise decisions at all times. Yeah. I'm not the smartest dude in the room, but I don't want to get used and abused by someone who is. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Ooh, that's good. That's good.
So
that's powerful.
Yeah, we have to protect our minds. And when we're intoxicated, it's just not going to happen.
Especially someone that is deemed smarter than you can easily manipulate you if you're unaware, right? Yeah. Because I think that's a lot of the situations it sounds like we were both in. So removing that part of yourself, like, how lonely was it for you though? Like, now that you're building your business and it's you and your wife, like, what do you think that advice that someone our age, is starting to build their business and they're the beginning of their empire going into the entrepreneur path needs to hear? Yeah.
So, what I tell everyone is, like, one is, well, for me, I tell people, keep God first. Like, put God in your life. You don't have to be a holy roller or nothing, but just keep God first. You have something to pray to, however that looks, whether it's Buddha or Jesus or Timbuktu, whatever. I mean, there's certain ones you don't want to, you don't want to be worshiping the wrong thing. But, so, like, stay focused. And I think if you're a young entrepreneur and you're learning, you need to be focused on one thing and master it. For me, I got into drywall because I was good building when I was adopted when I was right before I turned 8. I was giving up, and my stepdad that raised me, he taught me some basic skill sets when I was younger to build, and I was really good with my hands. And so when I went to I got kicked out of school my freshman year of high school, and I ended up at a trade school, and then. So, and I took carpentry, all that stuff, but I don't know what the hell I'm even talking about. What are they talking about?
The advice for entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I don't even know. Like, I went on a whole tangent.
That's good.
But so I ended up in drywall, right? Yeah. So and when I started in drywall, like, I didn't know anybody in drywall. People were like, was your uncle, was your dad, your cousin? I'm like, nobody. I went to trade school, and I was forced to go I was appointed by the judge to go to trade school. But I stuck with it. Like, I was like, oh, I'm pretty good at this. And I was like, I'm going to stick with it. And I tell a lot of young people, especially people getting in trouble, I was like, my trade, so I got in trade right before I turned 18, and I went through some real tribulations. I almost went to prison at 18. I was on drugs still. I was just crazy. But my trade was what I tell people was what saved me. Now, it could be God, it could be a bigger force, right? But I was able to go back to what I knew when I was learning, and I stuck with it. And I focused on it. I said, well, I'm going to just become really good at this. I like it. And I seen people starting to make money at it. And if I become better than the next guy, everything I thought of was become better than the next guy, right? Because when I became better than this guy, it put me in front of this guy. And then I became better than him, then it put me in front of someone else. Yeah. So if I become better than the next guy, you end up at the top. Yeah. Right? Because, like, in the construction world, say you're a laborer, right? Then you have, like, the journeyman is what it's called, right? So if I can become better than that guy, right, then that puts me up with the foreman. Then if I can become better than that guy, that puts me with the supers. And then you're on and on and on. Next thing you know, you're at you're amongst the elite, right? Yeah. And now you got to go against people that are good. But the difference is, do they think the same way, right? And then so, focus on, so what I would say is focus on one thing, become better than that next person. Yeah. The next person always changes, right? But you have to become better than them. Yeah. It's always going to change. Just like what we do today will affect us tomorrow. So like, say for yourself is whatever you're doing is I got to become better than that next person because it's going to lead you to the next person after that. Yeah. As long as we're climbing the ranks. I'll tell young people is like, don't chase the money, chase the position. Because once you learn the position, you hold that position, you learn that knowledge, the money's going to come no matter what. You chase the money, you're going to end up getting fired because you don't have the knowledge.
Yeah, because someone's in control of your future.
Yes.
Like you don't own your time. You don't actually own anything besides that person.
Especially when it's money driven.
Yeah.
Because now you can manipulate people with money, right? And if they learn the position, the skill set, whatever it is, I say position just in the construction trade, is then you can hold on. That's tangible, right? So focus on the one thing, get good at it, and then start to expand.
Yeah.
So that's what we did with with construction is we expanded and we said, okay, let's buy a building, let's buy a building, let's buy a house, let's buy a house.
Yeah.
Let's go from drywall to painting. Let's go from that to ceilings. Let's go to that to this. And now you open up these other little branches.
Yeah.
And that everything I do is kind of tied in.
Yeah.
To construction, real estate type thing.
So construction, you call it position, but so basically skills, right? So entrepreneurship is just like skill stacking.
Skill sets. Yeah. Skill set. Yeah. Because if you're like you're buying and selling businesses or something like that. Are you teaching that yet? Are you doing any kind of coaching?
No, not yet. I want to make sure I master it for myself and how we're building our wealth as well as obviously through real estate. Yeah. We both love real estate.
Yeah.
Taxes is tangible, right? And at the end of the day, it's just about cash flow and having enough stability to provide, because it does come with the net worth, but you can't really eat that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you can, cash flow is what's it's going to provide you and your family stability at the end of the day, along with the education that actually buying a business or buying real estate comes with. Yeah. Is because not only you said transferring the wealth to your family, but I think our biggest goal as an entrepreneur is just how many skill sets can I actually stack to become so irreplaceable at whatever I do and so like unemployable, because you don't want to go backwards. Yeah. It's like, why do you need this skill? It's because no one else can be me.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Yeah, you want to be better than the next guy, and so because you in the workforce world and entrepreneurial world, whether you're a business owner or just a normal person that's trying to be a boss or whatever, a manager, is we have to become better at what we're doing, right? And we cannot stop chasing that. Once we stop going after it, it's it. You might as well just sit back and go get a check for free from the government. Oh, yeah. Or you can go move to San Francisco and just go rob the stores. I don't know. You just don't go past $950 and they'll let you go. Yeah.
Isn't that sad how corrupted? Yeah. Like this, I'm still trying to wrap my mind around the mindset that it takes that the government is like allowing certain things because that's what they identify with now. It's like, we're going to allow this because that's what society has collapsed to. Yeah. Because people don't have any real skills, any real values, and no one wants a job anymore. Yeah. Right. And it's like, okay, so what are you doing? Are you actually teaching people how to be better than themselves than just like step out of their own learned helplessness? Or is because they're learned helplessness that they depend on a broken system that was never designed for people to succeed to begin with? Yeah. Because it just keeps people trapped in this mentality. It's like, oh, we got you. It's like, no, you don't.
Yeah, I think it's like with the government. I think it's a long term plays. When they created like the welfare system, it's suppression. And they like it because if they give you free money, you don't say nothing. You just do what they tell you, right? And so I think the same thing's happening with businesses. Is businesses stop listening to the government, right? And so the government's like, all right, we'll just create this rule, this law, this, blah blah blah. And then you know what? Hey, you guys just go steal whatever you want. We're not going to do anything about it. And that forces businesses to have to make adjustments or shut down, right? Yeah. So then the business has to go back to the government and basically say, I'm sorry. And the government will change it and say, okay, now you're under my control. So it's all control, right? Yeah. They're just allowing this. It's kind of like, I'm trying to think of an analogy, but like if you just let some kid run rapid, right? And you're not like, say one parent, there's two parents, right? So you have a kid and, you guys just say you're whatever, you have a kid, and then you let the kid go to the dad's house. The dad lets the kid do whatever the hell they want, right? But then the kid has to go back to mom, and the mom is like, so it's just like, and everyone's just confused on what the hell's going on. Yeah. But yeah, that's crazy.
No, I totally agree with you, especially with the kid thing and the parents not agreeing to raise the kid a certain way, because I feel like that's a lot of disparity in relationships too. Yeah. It's like, well, I was raised this way and I turn out fine, and I was raised this way and I turn out fine. I'm like, obviously you're not, because there's some sort of dysfunction that carries.
But that's happening
to the relationship.
And that's happening in the world with business, with everything else, is the parents are like basically like Republicans and Democrats.
Yeah.
You know, and one says, hey, go over here, and the other one says, don't go there. You know, and then the person's confused, and then whoever has the power at the time gets to control. Yeah. So right now the Democrats have the power, so they keep the control.
Yeah, a lot of the businesses I work with are retiring businesses. That's like kind of my niche right now. It's how do I help these business owners transition, right? Because at the end of the day, we're all about legacy. Most people don't know they can continue a legacy outside of their family, because a lot of these kids, especially millennials and Gen Zs, they don't want to run these businesses. You know, I don't know about you and your kids and what kind of conversations you guys have, but these are the businesses that I feel, especially with my parents, like they want to hand me their business. I'm like, I don't want it. I didn't want it for 5 years, but I still feel responsible for it because I don't want to let go of the legacy. But I'm trying to work out like a middle ground to where it's like, hey, how can I take care of the legacy, but I don't have to be that person.
So what do you like, since we're on that topic, like when you're looking at these businesses, and this is for like people who want to learn how to buy and sell businesses, you got to contact them. And so you're retiring. So like say it's an older person, older couple, maybe they're in their 60s and they're tired. They've been beat up a lot, like one too many times or like 50 times, and they just can't get over that hump. It's that kind of, and you're like, hey, like, and they're thinking of just shutting it down to nothing and just giving it all up. And you're like, hey, there's still some value here. Yeah. You know, and then here's a little cush, and then I'll take on the problems. Is that how it works?
Yes, that's exactly the ones that I feel most connected to. Because at the end of the day, like it takes a lot of grit to turn around a business, but I also have that mindset, if it's not me, who? But now I'm more well equipped with like bigger partners that have the money, that have like years of business experience, that it doesn't have to be me, but I can be the connector where one person doesn't have to lose their business and the next person that wants to run businesses just like it have the opportunity to. But on the way out, like how do we make sure that the retiring people like actually get their values worth without liquidating their assets? Because if you're liquidating something, you're only getting like 80% of the value, if any. If any.
Sometimes 50%.
Yeah, like that's like the highest, right? If you're hiring like an insolvency person, like you're not getting much. You're just getting scraps from what they think your business is worth. Yeah. But I think it's more of a psychological and a mentality that's attached to their business. Is like they don't care about the chairs. Like they care that they've spent 30, 40 years building this thing, and they have to like set it on fire pretty much on paper. Yeah. That's pretty much a bankruptcy when you're old. Yeah. And it's really sad to take a look at some of these businesses that no longer either is valid to like their kids' eyes, because they're like, I don't want this business. This is boring. Like I want to go chase my dream and become a YouTuber. Influencer. Because there are other ways to make money. Yeah. And at the end of the day, these businesses aren't about making money, but it's someone's like lifeline, right? Because you want to make sure that their life's work is poured into it. Like you're building this business right now. I'm sure in 20 years, I'm hoping you want to exit sooner or scale it at least. Yeah. Right. So scaling is what I love doing, because I love finding money. I love talking to investors with the same mentality of like, how do we not become sharks and hedge funds in these areas, and actually finding the right partners that have the capacity, have the people. Because hiring 18 players, it's really hard. Yeah. How do we put the right people in the place and find the money so that it feels secured enough for them to actually let it go and allow the business to go into a new era of growth? Because most of these businesses, they don't even have like social media, they don't even have a website. Yeah. You know, and it's kind of sad.
What are some of the types of businesses you're looking at? Like, I mean, you don't have to get in details if it's a deal, but like, what do you like? What is there a certain type of business you like to look at, or is there just like the type of person, or? Yeah.
So specifically right now, we're only in the home services sector.
What is it like? What's home services?
Kind of like your business, construction, but like HVAC businesses, furniture stores, anything that supplies like the real estate market and migration
to the
patterns.
Homes. Okay.
Anything with homes, because that's kind of like the bread and butter. That's what I understand coming from real estate investing. So I just feel more connection to
Makes sense.
Yeah. You know, like I'm not going to go out. Like my parents have a business, like they have a restaurant, but I'm not going to go out and try to buy another restaurant just because I think I have a restaurant.
Those are tough.
Brick and mortars are hard.
Yeah, especially restaurants.
Especially restaurants. Yeah. I'm like, why would I do something when I already have a good restaurant? Like,
you're not going to buy out your parents. Sorry, parents.
I want to buy out my
parents. She said
but
no.
It's going to be my way.
You're going to have to give it for free. Inheritance.
But I think that's what's important to understand, is like there are ways to exit with a peace of mind by handing it to people with like the non-corporate mentality of not just wiping them out through private equity funding.
Yeah.
Not all private equity is bad, because a lot of these are funds created by people kind of like us, right? The black sheep's the one that like never got fully educated by the system, but we somehow learned along the way in the 10, 20 years that we've been experiencing life and getting our asses handed to us like more than once, that there are other people just like this looking to help other people. They just don't have the time or the knowledge or the resources to go after it themselves.
So are you like doing the transactions? Are you brokering the transactions, or like a little bit of everything, whatever you can get your hands on? Or
yeah, like right now we are acquiring the businesses for ourselves. All the smaller deals, like $1 to $10 million, right? Anything above that, I'm happy to pass it on to someone else without being a broker. I can broker the deal just to put the deal together.
Yeah.
But I don't have a business broker license or anything, because I found ways and people that made me believe and has shown me that you don't need to be a broker to broker deals. It's just a better way of thinking when you get around the right people with that proximity.
Yeah. I like that. I mean, we thought about that too. It's like, should we just buy out businesses that are struggling?
Yeah.
You know,
absorb
maybe,
it.
Yeah, maybe they have some customers or something. They're just tired. Because sometimes you get tired, you know, and like you said, is okay. You're tired. It's, you know, at a good day, it's worth $2 million, but you're tired and it hasn't done anything. It's worth, you know, 500,000.
Yeah.
Whatever.
And those are exactly the ones that I'm looking for. It's more of a psychology than it is a number, because the numbers, everything in life is negotiable, especially numbers. But when you understand where someone's coming from and really have empathy and compassion for why they're still stuck in their business and work around that, and truly just being kind to their situation and not, you know, trying to exploit them because, you know, their business is on a decline. Like, no one wants to hear that. It hurts the ego. You know?
But I mean, yeah, it does hurt. Well, especially when they've been doing it like 30 years or whatever, and because it's like their baby.
You don't be, hey, your kid sucks, you know?
Yeah. And then
give me your kid.
Your kid sucks.
Your kid sucks. Give me your kid.
Yeah. And a lot of times it's like those older businesses are lackluster. Like everything that comes with it is kind of jacked up, I think. Like, do you see them what they're like look good, and like maybe say like an HVAC company, like they have trucks and everything, and then they suck? Or is it like their trucks from the 1980 and their buildings like got cobwebs, and is that type of thing where they just never changed? Like they were killing it at one like 30 years ago and they just stayed the same. Yeah.
And I think they're so attached to that, like that feeling that it was doing so well. And it's kind of like an oblivious thing, right? Like sometimes you have like rose-colored glasses over your own business. It's because you can't see the things that an outside perspective can show you. But until you're willing to receive like feedback on your business, especially from someone younger, it's harder to talk to older people, but you got to find that middle ground. Like I can't go in and be like, hey, your business sucks. Like they're going to be like, 30 years old, like, what do you know?
You mean?
Like, what do you know?
Look at this.
This business is older than you. Like, you're probably right. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But I think it's that communication that you have to understand why they can't see that.
Yeah.
It's an attachment, right?
Yeah.
It's all psychology based, and it's all like understanding the soft spot.
Yeah.
And like coming to terms with, hey, like business is all about trust. The more transparent you can be, the more credibility you're going to have.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, I might not have the 30 years in business as you, but look, like we can come to terms with like finding you a partner, or, you know, something that makes you have the peace of mind of letting it go and letting it actually become that thing that you used, like it once was 30 years ago.
So do you, like, if you're doing these businesses, flipping businesses, are you putting a new team into place, or are you kind of getting it and moving it? Like, or is it everything's different? Each deal is different. Each
deal is different. Most of it right now is transfer of value.
Yeah.
So how good are their like social standings? How good are their employees? And just how good is the business on paper? And to transfer of value, it's usually one of those is lackluster, right? So most of them comes with employee, but does the employee actually want to be there? Or are they kind of like deadwood?
Yeah.
So sometimes it's hard, but a lot of the owners that can't exit is because they're attached to the employees because they've been with them for 25, 30 years. So you just have to make sure you do the right kind of audit and make sure they're in the same mental place as you. It's like, hey, I'm going to make some changes around here. Are you okay with it?
Yeah. Yeah. Do you try to keep the owners around a little bit? A couple of years, or it just depends on the person?
Depending on the person, maybe not more than a year. Yeah. Probably a year is a good training wheel to...
Just because they know the team.
They know the team, and it's more of like a comfort thing. Yeah. Because it takes people a little bit to like ease off.
Yeah, because they've been going to that same building.
Kind of like withdrawal.
Yeah, they've been going to say at 7 a.m. every day, right there.
It's like go home autopilot, you know? Like you can't remove someone instantly because they're going to feel rejected from their own business.
And then they may just stop the deal because I'm sure there's a timeline before you got to set it all up and all that stuff.
Due diligence, like what, 90 days to 6 months sometimes?
Oh, yeah, to get the value.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, then you're also working on the Fit and Frugal podcast.
Yeah.
So before we close and, get off this, but tell us a little bit about the podcast, because I've seen some of them and they're really cool. I think you're traveling a little bit, different backdrops. It's really cool thing. So like, what do you talk about? I see what Fit and Frugal, but what are some of the topics you talk about?
Lately, it's actually a lot more authentic living, more than just like fitness and finance, which is what I started off, but that was more of an ego play because I didn't allow myself to get deeper with the guests, right? Because it's a lot easier to pick a topic and just talk about that. But honestly, I got bored of it. I'm like,
there's only so much you can talk about being frugal and fit. Like,
but
save your money.
Right.
Done.
And that's easier, right? That's easier.
I'm not making fun of you. I'm just joking.
No, what's funny, it's more of the values of what fit and frugal is who do you have to become to fit the values of the life that you define for yourself? What does success look like for you? Yeah. Is it a number? Is it a body? Is it something? And frugal, like all the things you own doesn't really matter to you. Because most people are just buying things.
Just to buy them?
And they don't need it because FOMO is huge in this like social media world too. Yeah. Just because you have to have it doesn't mean I have to have it. It doesn't serve me anything.
But that's how it is.
That's and
crazy.
And it's more living by design of what's important to you. And first and foremost is doing the internal work to understand what your values are. Because most of us, I think, are living a life mostly in our 20s. Yeah. You're not designing your values. It's given to you. It's given to you by your parents.
It's true. Society.
It's programmed to you by your friends, society, your workplace. Like all of these outside influence, like hugely impacts who you are, who you think you are. So I think for me with the podcast itself is I talk to a lot of people just like yourself. I love your story and how you can proudly say like, hey, I don't have like, the normal education, but look at
I can tell everyone, you have for yourself. I can tell everyone I'm pretty screwed up.
Me too, man. Is that why we're friends now?
Yeah, I'm pretty screwed up.
Yeah, and I think it's more of that and the people that's bold enough to do the internal work of building self-awareness and defining what life should look like for them, regardless of what society tells them their life has to look like.
Yeah, I like that.
And that's my podcast.
Yeah, Fit and Frugal. Yeah. I know we call ours the Chris Estrada Podcast, and people keep texting me, you need to give it a real name. I'm like, well, I don't know what to name it. Yeah,
people tell me the opposite. They're like, just change it to the Tawni Nguyen Podcast. I'm like, what?
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know what to name it. What do I name it? I talk about all kinds of things, talk to all kinds of different entrepreneurs. Yeah. We've had pastors on. We've had different entrepreneurs from all different sectors. Yeah. I like hearing the story, the life. I like hearing that testimony. Like, how'd you get here? You know, did you overcome? Because it's hard for me. Like, really, it's hard for me to relate. And it's bad. It's hard for me to relate to people that ain't gone through nothing.
Same here.
It's really hard. And when I hear people's stories, I'm like, whatever, dude.
You're a little soft for me.
Yeah, and you know what? I grew up here in Phoenix, Arizona, and we were poor. We were dumpster diving. I was giving up. Like, I had a rough childhood. Yeah. There's other people that had worse, right? Yeah. But they also ain't doing what I'm doing. So when I hear people like, oh yeah, well, what are you doing? Or I heard this one, like, yeah, they grew up with both parents. I'm like, that's not hard, bro. Like, both parents in the house and neither one was an alcoholic. Yeah. You could be the poorest in the world. That's a great household.
That's actually a blessing.
That's a great household,
Yeah.
But yeah, I appreciate you guys coming here. I'm super excited for what you guys are doing. Keep buying and selling businesses, teach people, put out a good word, tell your story. It's good stuff. The Fit and Frugal. Where can everybody find you?
Right now on Instagram, it's Tawnisaurus. I'm still in conflicts with changing it to Tawni Nguyen. Like, I love Tawnisaurus because it's like a personal touch to it. It's fun. It's who I am as a person, because what I learned is like I was always afraid and ashamed of like my immigrant story, because that's how I got bullied like most of my childhood, and that's what led me to like drugs and alcohol and all of these things that no longer define me. But I think now I'm like, let's have fun with life. And true entrepreneurship, it's like, how can you create opportunities for people along the way? Yeah, it's not just making money for yourself, because money is just a byproduct of one, being a good person, and two, adding value to the people around you. And like three, not caring what other people's opinions might have about you, especially like just in broad social media terms, you know?
Yeah. I like it. So go find her on Instagram and add value. That's that last nugget. Add value. That's our job, to add value. So I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you for having me.
For everybody watching, follow us, like, subscribe to everything we're doing, and be blessed.